Happy Wednesday. Hump day. Hump day. I am super duper stoked because today I get to interview one of my favorite content creators on here. I get to interview one of my favorite content creators on here. It is somebody that I have an immense respect for, and I get to bring him in to talk about being an introvert. My God, like this person, I see his introversion videos every day. There's not a single one that I miss. And now I get to sit and have a chat with him, which is super duper exciting. Before we get into that chat today, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Kai. It's nice to meet all of you. It's nice to see all of you. And I am a content creator here on Instagram and over on TikTok, and I talk all about mental health. I was diagnosed with ADHD, severe depression, and anxiety, the fun triple threat over here. I was diagnosed with all of that in 2022. And now here I am hanging out with you, documenting my entire experience with all of you. I talk openly about everything that I am diagnosed with. And today I'm super excited to be talking about introversion because there's so many misconceptions about introversion. So I'm going to bring in our guest today. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing?
I can't tell you how excited I am to be talking with you because I see your videos all the time and you're just too smooth. You know what I'm saying? Like you're too smooth. Like you got the nice camera HD. You're like zooming in on like all this like production value. Like you're killing the game, man.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that because I really don't have it. I just go off on my phone like everybody else. So I appreciate that. I did think about doing, a bit more in terms of production, but that would just stifle my consistency. So I didn't do it that way. I just kept it simple.
Right. No, listen, people are appreciating the work that you're doing. I appreciate the work that you're doing as well. And I'm stoked to talk all about introversion because that's what we talk about. I think if there's two black guys on the internet that talk about introversion, it's me and you.
Beautiful thing. Look at that. Look at in 2023, you could have two black guys just talking about introversion on the
Right. And it's beautiful. Now, here, I want to get to know you a little bit before we start to get into everything. So who are you? Who am I talking to right now? Who am I talking to? Where are you from? What's your deal, my friend?
So I am JB. I am originally from North Carolina, Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I went to school in the University of Connecticut, UConn, which is the jersey in the back.
I see. Okay.
That is my jersey. I used to play basketball.
What? Look at that flex. Did you see that flex? You saw that flex right there, yo?
There'll be people to ask, and I'm not one to really talk about it, but I can't not talk about it with a big thing behind me. So,
right.
So I got my undergrad at UConn in economics, and I ended up going to get a gig over at Yale, and then figured out that I wanted to actually go get my master's at Yale. So I did that, and I got my master's at Yale, finished up last year, got that in ethics, and it's an interdisciplinary. So it was like business ethics, it was religious ethics, environmental ethics, and somehow or another, I rolled that into introversion at the end of it.
Right.
So I got to study introversion scientifically, do scientific research, work with the Emotional Intelligence Center at Yale. And then I was like, I could do all the studying I want to do about it, but, what do I feel? And how do I feel? Because the best studying, the best information comes from the person who is the introvert, and that is me, and it's been me my whole life. So I decided to hop on to Instagram. I've had this page for a while.
Right.
I think people can go back and look at the history of the page. I've had it since 2016. I didn't do anything with it. I posted 2 pictures back to my introverted nature. And then I toyed with thinking with doing content around introversion, but I'm like, how do we even go about doing that? And November of, the end of 2022, I decided to post a video, and it did okay. And then around the holidays, December, January-ish, I've been consistent for about a month, and then I just saw, 100,000 views, a million views, and that was when Instagram was given very much favorable time for reels. So I happened to catch that wave, and here we are.
Both you and I happened to catch that initial Instagram reel, like when they were really trying to win content creators over from TikTok. Like they were giving like just a lot of incentive to get people to post on reels. And I think you and I happened to catch that wave at the same time. And man, so you have a whole literal scientific background when it comes to introversion, like AKA you have receipts. You have receipts for all of this, right?
Yeah.
That's insane. So I kind of want to start, and because if there's anything that I explain a lot of sometimes, it's what an actual introvert is. So I want to establish that as a baseline. What is an introvert?
I like to keep it super simple, super basic, because I don't want any confusion around the topic. Introversion, to me, at its very core, is just how you choose to recharge, and that is internally. And for extroverts, you guessed it, it's externally. So it's very binary. It's one or the other for me. People, there's some people who like to identify as ambiverts, and who am I to tell them, you can't identify as ambiverts? But for me, the basic foundational definition for introversion is just you choose to recharge internally, and usually that means that you do it in solitude by yourself.
I could you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I quite often find myself explaining that very thing to people because I think that there are a lot of misconceptions regarding introversion, and it's quite often, like sometimes people will even, like I'll post a picture of me out like in public somewhere, right? I'll be like at a baseball game, or I'll be with some friends, and people will be like, "Oh, you're out.
You're talking to people. You're having conversations."
Yeah, it's like you're not allowed to as an introvert. You're not allowed to post content about it, apparently. I've gotten those kind of comments too, who told me that you wouldn't be introverted if you were posting these videos. And like, I'm in the confines of my own home. I'm as introverted as this
in a
could be.
controlled environment.
Yeah, like there's nobody around me. So, this is introversion at its best, actually.
I tell people all the time, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is that, like, and this is what we're kind of alluding to, is that people think that introversion automatically means shy, which is not necessarily the case. Can it be a part of it? Of course.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't consider myself shy at all. Like, if you put me in a room and I have to like work that room, like I'll be fine, especially if I'm around people that I'm familiar with or in a situation I'm familiar with. Like, I have no problem. But like you said before, my battery will drain really fast, and that's when I'll kind of remove myself from the situation. But like I don't necessarily consider myself shy. What would you say to that aspect of things, like that why do people think that introversion is so connected to shyness?
Well, I mean, I think there are a lot of introverts that also identify as shy, and I think shyness does lend itself to introversion, but they're not the same thing. They often get confused, just like quietness gets confused with introversion, just like antisocialness get confused with introversion, and they are not one and the same. You can be introverted and those things, which there are people. And another thing that has to be expressed is that, like anything else in this world, introversion is a spectrum. There's people, it's a sliding scale. People find themselves on different spots. You can find yourself in different spots of that spectrum in different parts of your life. And often people think introversion is a result of trauma. And that, to me, that's not the case either. And listen, I was born an introvert. I came out the womb an introvert.
Yeah, I was going to ask, when did you realize that you were an introvert?
Yeah, I came out the womb introverted. All my family members, I have nothing but sisters, and and they're all extroverted, and I'm not. And because of that, you get told when you're younger that you're shy, and so you kind of do cling on to those stereotypes because you don't know any better. I didn't have the words to articulate my introversion or even identify it until much later on.
Right.
And once I did and realized, oh, that's why, you know, I'll tell a quick story that this is how I realized that recharging was a thing for me. I went to visit a family member in Dallas. I went to Dallas, went for a week. It was beautiful, but they just had recently moved there, so they wanted to show me all the things that they seen. So I went out every day, did something all day, every day. We're eating, we're going to this, eating, going to that. And it was a great time. And then by the time I got back home, I was exhausted and drained. And I just, for the next week or so, I felt like lethargic and I didn't know what was wrong. So much so that I went to the doctor for it. I went to the doctor and said, you know, I don't know what's going on, you know, but something's happening with me. I'm just so tired. I'm so exhausted. And we ran blood work and all that stuff. And for them to tell me that there was nothing wrong with me. And what I realized after that was, you know, maybe I got to take a day, maybe 2 days, just rest. I didn't call it recharge at the time, but I was just calling it a rest. And then I rest. And then I just found myself, all right, building back up. I rest by myself. I didn't go anywhere. It was more like a staycation, if you will. And realize that, okay, resting obviously can get you back charged, but resting by myself, like resting in an intentional way, recharging, made me feel a lot better. And then I realized I needed to build that into my routine. I could still do things, but I would have to make sure that I had moments where I can go and recharge real fast and then get back to whatever it was I was doing, or not get back to it. It depends how I feel on the day.
Right. So why Instagram? What made you decide that you were going to just take all of this information that you got from school, that you got from personal experience? What made you decide to dedicate so much time and energy to educating people on introversion?
Well, I mean, it wasn't, my intentions weren't necessarily to educate. It was to create content around what I know I've gone through. I didn't know, I figured it would resonate with people. You always hope that it would resonate with people, but you don't really know. And I can imagine people even in this room today has gone through the trial and error of throwing content out into the ether and hoping that more than, you know, just your family members look at it. And so I looked
my
at
mom
it,
doesn't watch my stuff. I can say that right now. I've tried.
My mom didn't until once I hit a certain number of followers, then she took it serious, which is usually how it goes. But so it's just like you just throw this content out and hope that it resonates, and it started creating conversations, which was great. I had really good engagement. I still have really good engagement on my content, and I found that Instagram has just been, it's been easy for me. I know how to use it. It wasn't like a strategic move for me. It was just a thing that I didn't, as an introvert, I'm not active on most social media platforms. I didn't have TikTok until more recently. I didn't use Twitter until more recently. And I've always had an Instagram, but that was more to just look up friend stuff and call it a day. And like doom scroll. So I was already here.
I swear, if I see one more video about the Titanic, that is my entire feed right now. It's all about the Titanic thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am doom scrolling right now.
That's all I was using it for. It was just to look at stuff like that.
Yeah. It's and you've been doing some really great work. And now I'm like curious. So like when the camera's not rolling, right? How do you, JB, spend your nights introvert? Like, what is a good introverted night in your world?
A good introverted night for me is to just, so I walk my dog. I got a French bulldog named Finn. He's asleep right here. So he's right here knocked out at the moment. I'm sure he'll get up and toil around in a second. So I walk my dog. I, kind of just hang out, recharging myself, maybe listen to music, maybe just listen to nothing. There are times where I literally have nothing going on and I don't have the TV on, and I kind of just sit with my own thoughts. I mean, it's pseudo meditation, I guess, but I'm not really thinking deep about anything. And sometimes it's a walk. Sometimes, I value the sun, so I go out and try to get into it as much as I can. But it's very basic things. There's nothing crazy. And I also enjoy being around friends and family. I make sure I tap into my friends and my family. I think that's another misconception about introverts, that you don't want to be around people
Yes.
at all. And
Yes.
that's not the case. You know, I love my family and I love my friends, and I'm fortunate enough to have the same group of friends for a long time, and most of them are introverts, so we don't like overstep boundaries.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
I'm really, really lucky in that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what I want to do, and I know that you have like this really extensive scientific background, so I want to kind of
Not
dive
extensive.
into.
I promise
Well,
you, it's not extensive.
you went to Yale. That's a flex. That's a flex. I went to Mercer County Community College. So what I want to know is this. Like for me personally, like I'm diagnosed with ADHD, generalized anxiety disorder, and severe depression. Does introversion have any sort of connection, not just to the three that I mentioned, but just to the mental health diagnosis or disorders? How much does introversion have a connection to those things?
Yes and no. Introversion outright, no. But introversion does play a part in exacerbating some of those other things. An example is the pandemic. The pandemic really forced everyone to be inside. And because of that, depending on what your circumstances were, if you were, let's say you lived alone, like me, I lived alone during the pandemic. So that meant that, hey, I get alone time that I've been craving, right? And that's all fun and games for the first 2 weeks, but then you get lonely. And then who would have thought that an introvert eventually gets lonely? But they do, and we're humans at the end of the day.
Yes.
So we are tribal in nature, so we do need to find our pack and be a part of one, regardless of how introverted we say we are. And I think that really, you know, magnified people's other things. Like if you had ADHD or if you had depression, I think the pandemic and being an introvert created some like agoraphobes, so people who were afraid to go out the house.
Yes.
And it made people less trustworthy of the outside world, so then they became more and more hermits and probably enveloped more into their introversion. So I think the pandemic made people who are introverted and also risk adverse more of that, and probably moved them further along the spectrum. And the same could go for all the other diagnoses that you said, that, you know, not so much ADHD. I don't think that introversion plays a part in ADHD so much, but definitely with depression, and definitely with just overall how people feel on a day-to-day, because they're not going outside, they're not getting any vitamin D from the sun. Then, you know, it's a domino effect of things that happens that ultimately creates people circumstances where they feel really down, and then they conflate it under this umbrella of introversion and have a negative connotation around it. And that's not what introversion is.
Right. And I'm glad you said that. And I do want to just point out something just in the chat, because I saw it come through a couple times. So one of the things that I want to point out, because it was the conversation or topic of having a female or a woman's perspective on the introvert conversation, which is a totally understandable thing. Right now, what we're doing is we're talking about this from our perspective, just as Black men, as Black content creators. Like, that is the conversation right now, right? So because that's what we're experts in right now, right? So so that's you guys know, both he and I both talk about introversion all the time, and I want to get everybody's perspective. But right now, what we're doing is talking just from a Black man, Black content creator perspective. And there's plenty of time and energy that both of us put into having the perspective of everybody involved. So I just want to make sure that's thrown out there. You mentioned earlier about introverts getting lonely. Do you think that introverts are more prone to feel loneliness than extroverts?
Yeah. I think that we are, well, I don't know if we're more prone. I'll just say that we create circumstances for ourselves that can promote loneliness inadvertently. And it's one thing to be alone. Most of us are comfortable with being alone, but under our own rules and guidelines. So, you know, it's one thing if that's why we want to be invited to places and be able to say no to them. So we know that you're thinking of us. So we're comfortable with that, and then we just still don't go. But as far as feeling alone like that, or feeling lonely, that can create a whirlwind of issues for us if we allow it to get too far, because then you'll end up having, you'll just have your own thoughts in a vacuum, and that in itself are not
Right.
good, you know,
Right.
and so being lonely is not ideal, and we shouldn't celebrate it in terms of introversion, but definitely I need to recharge alone, which makes it difficult for, you know, people who don't understand that. And I've learned I've had to articulate that to people. I have to actually communicate it to
Right.
people for them to know. I can't have them like try to guess it, which I
Right.
used to do in the past. But yeah.
Do you think that there's any, I guess, negatives to being an introvert as opposed to an extrovert? I know that's a tough question to ask, because like we try to view things just from our own personal experience and all of that. But do you think that there are any negatives to being an introvert?
Yeah, I do. I think that because we're introverts, we tend to, some, not everybody, tends to think that, you know, the world needs to bend to how we operate. And to be honest, the world operates more in an extroverted way than anything, if we're going to be honest. And most people in most circumstances value extroverted traits over introverted traits, which we're trying to change by promoting the conversation around introversion and helping people realize that there's value here. But if I say, or if I celebrate being the kind of person that doesn't like to talk to anybody, doesn't want to have connections with anybody, well, then guess what? If I'm that kind of person in the workplace, then I'm probably not going to be that person that gets promoted, or I probably won't get considered for that job. Or if I'm that kind of person on a sports team, well, I'm probably going to be that person that's not going to get the ball passed to them, or not going to get any playing time. Because at the end of the day, people want to have connections in some way, somehow. So, you know, I think that the one negative thing that can be said about introversion is that if we allow it, we then find ourselves in situations where we kind of promote being an outcast in a way that is detrimental to the goals that we have.
Interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting. I never thought of it from that perspective, but as you were explaining that, it makes complete sense. How it can be, how we do sometimes view ourselves as the outcast.
Yeah.
You know, a little
and
bit.
It's perfectly fine if you don't want to, you know, be promoted at that job, or you don't care to be on that team or want to be around people, then fine. That's
right.
That to each his own. But if you, it's a conflict if you say that you want to be, like, if you want to go for a promotion at your job, then you will have to do the things that help you resonate with the people that's choosing that person for that job, whether that be network, whether that be doing extra work. Maybe you have to go outside of your normal routine in order to be seen and be involved. It's not that you have to be completely outside yourself, you know, kicking and screaming and be the loudest person in the room. I think that those values are a bit antiquated, but definitely you have to stand out in some way, and that may require you to come out your office every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you that are in the chat that have questions, down at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a little question mark. Hit that question mark down at the bottom and put your questions in there. That way I can see them. If they come through the chat, there's a chance that I might miss them. I did see one in here that I think is a good thing here. This is from Tiffany Got Goals Momentum. She asked, can either of you speak to how introversion correlates to how you may attract high energy people or people with high needs? I find that strangers tell me their life story. I have to go home and nap. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, people gravitate towards us because we have a calming and soothing nature, and we listen. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we listen. Most of the people that they probably are talking to don't listen or interrupt them or play that double dutch game and waiting to talk. You know, so we listen. We're very analytical, and most of us are empathetic.
Absolutely. How do you prep yourself if you know that you're going to go to a situation or a gathering or a party that isn't maybe, you know, something that you're used to or something that you prefer? How do you prep yourself for that?
Well, I go by a value system in my head now, and so I make that decision, make it really easy for people. Another thing that came to me from the pandemic was that I found that I was lonely, and then people weren't calling or checking in on me, and I'm like, what's going on with that? And then I realized, because I was really reflective during that time. I mean, I almost had to be. I had no choice. It was just me. And I found that, oh, I'm not there for them. I'm not sending, any text messages to them, checking in on them, or I'm not FaceTiming any of my, family, checking in on them. And I learned a lesson there where you have to reciprocate in order to get what it is. You have to be the thing that you say you want in order to get it. And that meant that if I want my family to be, responsive to me, I have to be responsive to them. And that same value system correlates for things I have to go to. If I want, to someone to send me a birthday text, I got to send them a birthday text. I can't forget their birthday. Or if I want them to come to my party, which I wouldn't have a party because I'm an introvert. But let's say if I did,
be over by 8 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly.
The latest.
So like, if I did have one, I'd go to theirs and I show up and I support the people that I care about, and I make sure that they know that I care about them by supporting them. And just like this page, I can't expect people to tune in, and I don't tune into no one else's thing. I quickly found your page and I'm like, I'm following. And then everyone that I see that is like it, I follow, because it's just a reciprocation factor.
Absolutely. Do you think that being a Black introvert is any kind of significance? Do you think that there's any significance there, or and if so, what are your thoughts there?
Oh yeah, I have a video on it during Black History Month where just being a Black man, period. From my experience, I feel like as soon as I walk out the door, it's playing defense to the world. So I got to be mindful of a laundry list of things that other people just don't have to be mindful of, and that's so it's not okay. But like it's I'm not alone in that. There are women that have to think about the laundry list of things that I don't as a man, and there's people of other races that I don't have to think of those certain things. But for me personally, I'm playing defense automatically. And being an introvert, I have tend in the past to kind of be a bit standoffish. That was another thing that people kind of labeled me as standoffish. But then when I thought about it, I was standoffish.
Actually, come to think about it.
Like my face, I don't present in a very approachable way. I had braids at the time. Now I'm locking my hair. So I have locks and tattoos, and I'm Black, and it could be a lot for a lot of people. It shouldn't have to be, but it is. The facts, we live in the real world, and it is. So that on top of
keeping it real,
quiet, you don't know what's going on with me. And don't let me have my introverted wardrobe on, which is glasses and a hoodie.
And a hoodie,
in my AirPods. I'm really like, what is he doing over there?
That's 100% me, because like especially when I go for a jog, I usually, if it's cool outside, I'll wear my hoodie. I have my Beats headphones on, and I live in a predominantly white neighborhood, and like you said, I have to be mindful of how I present myself, to the point that even if I'm running down the road and there's a person in front of me, I will purposely cross the street, like if they're running in the same direction, because I don't want to run up directly behind them, even though like obviously I have no ill intention. I don't want to even give the thought that there is. So
things like that.
Yeah.
You just have to be like, you know what? Let me just cross the street to avoid anything crazy happening.
Yes, absolutely. And like and when you're saying things like you're immediately on the defensive, like that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. It may not be just like an overtly in your face type of thing that might happen, but like these are things that we have to just subconsciously think about as we're going throughout our day. I love this. I love this conversation. I love what we're doing here. And there's a couple questions that came in through the question mark here. Once again, friends, if you have any specific questions that you want to ask, at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a little question mark. Hit that question mark and put your questions in there. If you don't see a question mark, just hit the plus sign and you'll see the question mark pop up. All right, so this first question is from Lived Dynamic Now. The question is, how do you balance if you're between both introvert and extrovert? It's exhausting at times. How do you balance that?
Well, thank you for not saying ambivert, because I don't believe in ambiversion. You're either an extroverted person who's kind of quiet, which is true. One of my siblings, she is an extrovert, but she is shy. She is quiet. So she likes to be around people. She gets her energy around it, but she's not dominating conversations. She's not loud or by any stretch of the imagination. Actually, she's more shy than me, and I'm the introvert. So you can be, well, to answer her question, or this person's question, how do you balance it? I mean, to be honest, you just need to build a recharging routine.
Mm-hmm.
You have to schedule it in like you schedule everything else in your life. If you schedule the gym, schedule a recharging session. The gym could be your recharging session for all I. But make sure if your day is built up with meetings, make sure you build in time on your calendar for the recharging, either in between or directly after. Put it in as a mandatory thing. I put a tweet out today that said, apologizing for recharging is like apologizing for breathing. They're both a necessity. You have to have it in order to operate, or else you'll always feel, just above like that quarter tank. And we all know what that's like when driving a car. So you need to get that thing back up to the full.
Yeah, absolutely. This next question comes from Jeffro340. Is there such thing as introvert discrimination? I don't think I've ever thought of that question before.
Introvert discrimination, you said?
Yeah, I guess like a discrimination against introverts. Like introverts will be
I think that subconsciously we're taught as children that extroverted characteristics are more valued, which inherently means that introverted characteristics are less than. And I think that just through, again, like you said earlier, it's not like somebody is doing something intentionally, but subconsciously the teacher picks or favors the more extroverted student. The job favors the more extroverted person in terms of promotion. I can't tell you how many times I've heard and witnessed myself a person get promoted or a job or be put in place in a position that they're not even competent or qualified for. But guess what? That person has a connection to the person that's making the decision, and usually it's because they're networked one way or another. Maybe it's some kind of like, relative or something, but regardless, it's networked. And you can get discriminated on if you're not outgoing in certain aspects, and it sucks. We're trying to change that narrative, but it is what it is at the moment.
Yeah, and it's funny that you said that, because one of the other questions that are in here, this is from Never Enough Hot Sauce, and they said, how does an introverted supervisor be successful?
Well, that's the funny part, is that introverts are very good leaders. We are very good.
I agree 100%. 100%.
We are very good leaders. I mean, we are highly analytical. Like I said earlier, we listen well, so we can take in information, and without butting in and thinking that we're not as egotistical. We don't always think our way is the only way. And we're empathetic. We can understand. Usually when you're supervising people, it's less about the technical expertise and more about the managing of personality. Listen, I had a job where I was forced to be the manager at one point because the manager before me just didn't show up, and they put me in place. And I went from being on the team to now managing the team, and overnight. And I learned that you have to listen, even if it's stuff you can care less about. But you have to establish some kind of rapport with people. And I think that we as introverts do that more naturally. It's not always easy, because it could be stimulation overload depending on what kind of job you have. But I do think that we make really, really, really great leaders. And I'll throw another stat at you, is that over 60% of the CEO, well, people in the C-suite of the Fortune 500, so that's CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, CTOs, identify as introverts. So more people identify as introverts in the top companies in the leadership position.
You hear that, introverts? We can be leaders. We can do it.
People are doing it.
Yes.
We just got to believe in ourselves.
I have two more questions here that I definitely want to get your insight on. And this is from Lil Miss Ruffet, and they ask, any research done on parenting while introverted? I'm exhausted.
Kids are relentless. They are relentless. I don't have any myself. I have nieces, and they are relentless, and I can give them back. So that's all I got.
You're like, here's a hug. Here you go.
There you go.
That's funny. And this is another great question. It's from K Mojo Graham, and they said, how do you explain a recharge to your spouse who's an extrovert?
The classic. You have to let them know that the recharge has nothing to do with them. It's not an offense to them. And you can build in your recharge. I mean, you have to be with relationships. I often get asked, can introverts be in relationships? And the answer is totally 100% yes. I mean, most relationships consist of an extrovert or an introvert. There's only two you could be. And
get out of here, ambivert.
Exactly.
You get out of here right now.
So I think that you have to articulate it in a way that comes off as, again, not demanding and not accusatory, like you're intruding or invading in my space. But you also have to set healthy boundaries for yourself. They have to respect it, and if they don't, then they're actually hurting themselves in the way of you're going to be less than, which means you're going to be less than for yourself and for that person.
Absolutely. And I think that's just good relationship advice in general, whether it's an introvert and extrovert, or an extrovert, introvert.
The same rules apply.
Setting that expectation, setting those boundaries. You should probably just do that anyway.
You should just do that, regardless of their
just talk to each other. It might help. As a content creator, do you have any advice to other people that might be listening that are looking to become a content creator like you are? What advice would you give them in regards to like building their platform? Because you were saying how you had this platform since 2016, and you know it's been a slow and steady race. And recently, you know, both you and I have had, you know, we're both blessed to have the platforms that we have and the audiences that we have and all of that. What piece of advice would you give to other content creators out there?
Well, yes, I had this page name since 2016. I didn't do anything with it. I literally I posted 2 photos. One was me sitting in a crowd of people, and another one was me sitting on like a bench or something. It was like the prototypical like Instagram photos. When I decided that I wanted to create content around introversion, I went all in. And a big thing, and I think you've spoken about this in a few of your lives that I was in, which is you're going to shoot a lot of shots and they're not going to hit, and they're going to be, it's not going to be a home run, especially right off the bat, and probably not even close to when you started is going to, like, you're not going to see that traction overnight unless you hit some crazy thing, you know, that Instagram just happens to value that day. But it's going to be a slow and steady race. It's going to be you know, 10K, or I'm sorry, it's going to be like 10 views, then 100 views, and then maybe 1,000 views, and celebrate those small wins when you can, because once you get to 5K and you know, 10K and all that stuff, you'll probably find yourself being jaded, but you have to reinvigorate and motivate yourself and be consistent. I think that's the thing that every content creator has ever said. And
there, consistency and patience are the things that I say to everybody. Because like all the people that you see online that have like a large following or whatever maybe are viral videos, like that doesn't happen all the time. Like that's not like a thing that's guaranteed. And I think it's remiss of people to base their success off of whether a video went viral or not. I think that people should, like, content, like if you're a content creator and you're looking to build a platform, you have to think more long term. It's not always going to be about like that one viral video, you know, like it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a couple base hits, right? But those base hits are really, really vital in regards to the overall game, you know, that we're playing. And you got to be flexible. You got to be flexible because trends change, people change, audiences change, you change.
Instagram has changed in a short period of time. The things that I was doing in February no longer work at the moment. And you can get, I mean, I think I went through the natural progression of like, oh, Instagram is broken. Or I don't know why they don't value the thing they just were valuing. And then you have to realize that it's ever changing, and, you know, they may value, you know, single posts versus reels this week or whatever the case is. And to your point about flexibility, you have to be mindful of those things and understand where your limitations are. For me, I think we started this conversation about the how this all looks, and I was mindful on that before I started. I told myself, if I create a whole production studio in my place, I'm not going to keep up with all that. I'm not going to go set the camera up, and I'm not going to, you know, downloaded from the SD card onto my Mac or
Yeah.
whatever. And then, you know, people do it and more power to
Yeah.
them, but I know I wouldn't keep up with that. I'd do
Right.
one fire video that's high production value,
Mhm.
probably would get like no views, and then I'd be done.
Mhm.
So I just
Mhm.
decided that I'm going to keep it simple and basic. I'm doing
Yes.
this stuff off my phone. I don't
Mhm.
have a script or anything. I kind of just go whatever I'm feeling that day,
Mhm.
and, you know, just knock it out so I can stay consistent. It's a very easy setup I got going on here. Nothing
Yeah,
heavy.
listen, same,
So I
same.
don't
You like you
I
see,
don't have
I'm
to.
doing back. I literally hold my phone back and forth just like this. Like that's all. That's all I do. That's all I do.
So you
It's
got to
very,
keep
very
it.
simple.
You got to know yourself. Be honest with yourself.
Yes.
Know what kind of person you are.
Yes.
If you are a person that can keep up with all the high technical stuff and with high production value, do it.
Absolutely.
But if you're not, you are setting yourself up to fail.
Yes, and your success is not based upon having the most expensive equipment and all. It's really, really not. Just make content that you believe in, that's genuine. Make content that resonates and educates and or makes people laugh. Like know what your purpose is with each video, and that's how you can judge. That's how you can judge your success from
Look
there.
at any. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at any viral clip,
Mm-hmm.
now we can just look at the
Yeah.
psychology of it. I can't think of one that is highly produced. I don't think any.
You're absolutely right.
You know,
You're absolutely right.
they're all just kind of organic looking, off the phone, caught up in a funny moment
Yes.
type of thing.
Yeah.
So clearly people don't care
Yes.
that, you know, if you have like a C-stand with like a big light aperture or all the
Right.
fancy words
Yeah.
that come with taking photos.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I always do whenever I see a viral video, if I come across a video I see has like a lot of views, the content creator in me, the first thing I do is I go to that content creator's page and I look at their other videos. Like I'm looking for consistency. I'm looking for like some
Yeah.
commonalities there, because like sometimes you'll see a viral video and you go to the page and like they don't really post anything like that ever.
Yeah, which is crazy to me. It's crazy because sometimes I'll see something viral on like someone else's page that someone shared it, and you go to that content creator and they don't even have that video on their page. And I'm like, what? How does it even get out here?
It's true, man. No, I do this. I'm so thankful that you and I got to sit and chat today. And I wanna kind of end with this. What is the biggest piece of advice that you would give to somebody who is having trouble embracing their introversion? What piece of advice would you give them?
First and foremost, we gotta get rid of the negative connotation around being an introvert. We have to simplify what that means. And I think that introversion just simply means that you derive your energies internally. And when you simplify it to that and not confuse it or conflate it with all the other negative connotations of being shy or antisocial or anything else, just realize that those are characteristics onto their own, but that is not what introversion is to, you can start to embrace your introversion and then ultimately realize that introversion is not a crutch. It's not something that you should feel like you're less than because you're an introvert. It's not synonymous with any of those things. It's just like, you know, I know this about me and now I can account for it in my day to day. So you can set yourself up for success if so long as you are honest with yourself and know that, okay, I need to build and recharging at these points throughout the day in order for me to be at my best. How can I do that consistently? And there'll be some days where you miss, but if you hit more than you miss, then you're having a good time here.
Absolutely, dude. You're fantastic. I'm so happy that we connected. And I always love seeing, particularly, you know, Black content creators doing their thing and being successful. Like to see that, it warms my heart with content that reaches everybody. Like what you're doing on your platform, it's great. I love it. I know tons of other people love it. Like honestly, this is not the last time you and I are going to talk.
Oh no,
I'm
already planning one to have you the other way around.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, we're definitely going to continue this conversation. And for those of you that are in here, if you missed any part of this conversation, don't you worry. It's going to be up on my platform tonight. As soon as it's done, it'll be up on my platform. I'm also going to be adding this onto my podcast as well, the audio onto the podcast, so you'll be able to listen to it while you're at work, whatever you want. It'll be available. Just check back again this time tomorrow, and everything will be there. Introverted JB, Thanks, man. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me, and thank you for allowing me to, you know, join and kind of embrace on your platform too, man. You do a great job of sharing information, and to give some flowers to you. You're very, very open and honest, and I think that's why people gravitate towards you, man.
I appreciate that, man. For real. Like, for real. That means a lot. Everybody, that's Introverted JB. Go follow him right now. Don't waste any time. Just go follow him. And everybody that's watching today, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful night. Much love. Good vibes. I'll see y'all later. Have a good night. Bye.
Peace.